Hello everyone, Morris here, and today we have the Season 4 Late Epic Era Meta Report. So we are getting quite close to the end of the Epic Era, so let's just jump in and see what is good at the current Epic Era, and of course, this hopefully will give you some information on what is good for climbing to, well, at the very end of the era. Okay, first we have the top archetype. So now quite a big shift from last time. Glorious Main is now the most popular archetype with well nearly 40% usage. Topaz still around, right, with about 20-25% usage, and then we have Jinx. And interestingly, so that's very interesting that at top 100 we see quite a bit of Leafy, a bit of Triple R as well, and Sustain is looking to have a comeback. So that is something to look out for. Okay, so for the top 200, similar story, but less leafy, less sustained. But that's why I feel like a leafy sustain might be more concentrated at the top, which might mean that they might be the ones that could be good for climbing the meta at the end of the epic era. Okay, so if you look at top 500 for 1000, similar story in terms of Glorious Main, still very popular. And then Topaz as well, and Jinx. So those are the three main archetypes that you'll be expecting to see on the ladder. Still see a bit of Leafy, a bit of actually Sustain, not as much, but basically like the others are not that popular. But if I go back here and you can see, especially Leafy, but also I think Sustain could be doing well. So yeah, Leafy is really concentrated at the top, which I think, I mean, as a Leafy player, it's good to see. And well, we'll actually get into the reason why that could be the case. Before that, let's just look at the runes, and basically it's kind of telling the corresponding story. Last Wish still the very top because it's a very good neutral rune. But then we have Glorious Main and Nut Hunter, right? Who would have thought that Nut Hunter as a starter rune can get up there? And yeah, actually in my video about the starter rune, I did mention that Nut Hunter is probably the one to look out for. And surprise, surprise, we are here in terms of the usage of Nut Hunter is really like the power level is strong enough to be able to compete with the epic rune. I think, of course, this Glorious Main enables it, but still, it's definitely up there. And then we do see Heaven's Echo, Sturdy Fighter. Those are for Topaz and also for the pure damage Sturdy Fighter builds. Still very strong. And then we have Miracle Leaf and Leaf Cloak. So these two are also very interesting because they are basically for Leafy team and also for Triple R's team as well. So you can see those being quite high on top at the top 100 at the moment. Having said that, I should note, right, that this data, it really depends on when I capture the data, especially for top 100, because for the top 100, people do shift quite a bit. So for in terms of their what team they use, so maybe they play a few games of one archetype, didn't quite work out, will shift to another archetype or something. So that's why I said like for top 100, still a bit hard to like say because the number is pretty small. But still, we do see Leafy being up there, and the general gist is still there. Let's put it that way. Okay, so similar story for the top 200 runes. So I'm not going to really go through all of them. If you're interested, definitely check out my blog post, which has all these information. Of course, you can pause the video to look at a particular graph if you wanted to. So for the top 1000 is a bit more, I guess, like all over the place. Is well, not I won't say all over the place. Glorious Main is still up there, but Nut Hunter a bit less. I think primarily because it's not easy to get Nut Hunter. You still have to grind all the daily and weekly missions. So that's why probably not everyone has Nut Hunter yet. Okay, so here's a bit of an extra graph, which is a bit small, but basically just showing the win rate of the top 20 most popular runes. And yeah, we see the Miracle Leaf, Nut Hunter, all those are pretty strong. So you basically just give you an idea of which uh, runes are strong. But of course, it's all depending on the archetype. So that's why I don't think there's too much to say in this infographic. Okay, let's go into the charms, and we see that charms of Vitality 2 is still the king. And I do feel like because there are a lot of zero cost skill card that you can't really put that, and well, it doesn't really heal, it doesn't really attack or anything, then the best charm that you can put on there is basically Charm of Vitality 2. And then we have Scotch Tape as well, and then the Plant Vitality, and I think the main interesting one is really the Beast. So previously you don't see that much of the Beast, but now, of course, with Glorious Main, a lot of the Beast charms are being used. Okay, I would say similar story for the top 200, 500, and 1000. That's why I'm not going to go through it too much. And actually, let's just get into the archetype, which is the interesting ones. So, well, this basically tells a lot, right? Glorious Main now is becoming like the Topaz of before, right? It's a staple archetype where like, it has pretty good win rate overall, and in a way now because there's so much Glorious Main, there's basically a lot of mirror matches, which kind of pulls the win rate down. Well, not down, but pulls the win rate towards 50% just because there are so many matches between Glorious Mains. And Topaz not really doing too well. That's very interesting to see. I mean, it's still doing okay, I would say, right? It's still close to 50%, so it's still a very strong archetype. But it's just that, wow, I never expected that Topaz would get down below 50%. So Jinx is also similar story, really. The main one to look out for definitely is Sustain and Leafy. Before I get to those, so Story Fighter is actually pretty similar to Topaz and Jinx. I expected it to be a bit stronger, but maybe I was overestimating its power level. But Sustain and Leafy, so especially for Leafy, is this wow, the top is over 60% win rate. That's pretty crazy. Sustain also finding like basically finding a comeback, I must say, because before it was very rough, and now Sustain is really doing, I would say, quite okay, and mainly because of Glorious Main. But we'll see later. Let's just get into the actual matchup and see why and how Leafy and Sustain are doing so well. Okay, so here is the top 100. Again, at the bottom of the graph shows the, like, I guess, fewer matchups, right? So I ranked it effectively by the popularity. So definitely a lot of Glorious Main, Topaz, and Jinx, whereas not many people play Leafy, Sustain. So that's why it's relatively low on the graph, and that just means that there's just not a lot of data on it. So that's why I don't take these percentages too seriously, I would say. But like, of course, take the trends. But for top 100, we can see. All right, let's just focus on Glorious Main first. Glorious Main doing very well because does well against Topaz and Jinx, the other two most popular archetype. Also good against Triple R. This has pretty good matchup except Sustain and Leafy. Yeah, sure, AoE as well, but AoE is not really used, so that's why I'm not going to talk about AoE. But Sustain and Leafy really has pretty good matchup against Glorious Main, and that's why like it's kind of keeping Glorious Main in check in a way. For Topaz, yeah, it's just not doing too well against Glorious Main. Otherwise, do quite well against the rest of the basically rest of the archetypes really. So that's why I think Topaz is still very strong. It's just that Glorious Main is kind of keeping it in check. And Jinx, to a certain extent, also keeping Topaz in check, even though like the matchup is pretty similar. Okay, so for Jinx, it's not doing too well, I must say. It's going okay against Glorious Main and Topaz. But then the downside is that it suffers from Leafy, which is kind of the one that might be up and coming, is because Leafy is so strong. If you see the win rate here, right? That maybe people will be shifting to Leafy, especially given its good matchup against Glorious Main. Having said that, if they are more Sustain, then Jinx is definitely good against Sustain. But Leafy might be the one that can kill Jinx, which is the problem. Okay, in terms of Triple R, yeah, it's again not doing too well against the top two, which is tough. Against Jinx is good, but then the problem is that it really suffers against Sustain and Leafy, and those two might be the ones that actually become more popular because those two are the ones that actually can farm on Glorious Main. So that's why you can see there's quite a bit of the rock paper scissors kind of dynamic here, where okay, Glorious Main is like now the most popular one because it does well against Topaz, which was a previous popular one, and now maybe we have another archetypes that become the most popular just because it does well against the most popular. So, for example, Leafy, right, might beat Glorious Main beat Topaz, but then Topaz actually beats Leafy, right? So that's kind of the rock paper scissors that we have now. And then it really depends on how the meta shifts at the very end of the climb, and that's kind of determines maybe like the top rankings. Okay, let's just continue looking at the archetypes. So Story Fighter, I must say is quite even across the board. Still, of course, suffer against Jinx. Jinx is still very tough for Story Fighter. But interestingly, okay, so this is the part where, okay, on this infographic it says that, oh, it doesn't do well against Leafy, but I don't think that's the case because if you look further down, right, yeah, so actually it does okay against Leafy because, of course, for Leafy, right, there's just not much. I guess there's still not a lot of data out here, so that's why, or maybe the more like well-defined or rather more optimized Leafy builds might be able to beat the Story Fighter, but of course the less optimized one might suffer from the Story Fighter. So hard to say for this one. Hey, Poison, yeah, Poison not doing too well, I must say. Good against Jinx, good against Sustain, but then the rest is a bit tough, so that's why I'm not doing too well. Wait, Sustain is one of the ones that I definitely want to talk about. Sustain very, very, very good against Glorious Main because at the moment Glorious Main doesn't really tag against Sustain, doesn't have any like secret removal, that kind of thing. And it also does okay against Topaz as well. Not bad. I still have a about 50% win rate if you check the other divisions, I guess. I won't say division, like different numbers of top players, and you do see quite a lot, maybe except for the top 100, and partly because maybe once you go down the rank, then you have less optimized sustain builds and so on. Okay, so let me just go back here. So yeah, but sustain is basically very good against Chorus main, quite good against Topaz as well. So that's why it makes sustain so good. And triple R as for the bonus, and also does quite well against Leafy. So those are the big matchups. The only problem with sustain is that the matchups are very polarizing. Right? So sustain basically auto lose to Jinx, kind of auto lose to Poison, and definitely Sturdy Fighter, the pure damage Sturdy Fighter as well, because the pure damage basically just ignores the shield. So that's why sustain is a kind of team where yeah, once you see a matchup, you probably have an idea of whether you win or lose, just because it's so polarizing. For Leafy, okay, Leafy is the other one that I think is probably like the one that is more fun to play and also has a very good success rate. So the only downside is that it suffers from Topaz. Sustain also, but you don't really see that much sustain yet. Yeah, but it does have very good matchup against Glorious Main, Jinx, Triple R, Story Fighter, not sure, as I said before, and Poison. So basically, it's kind of pretty good across the board except for Topaz. Uh, so that's why I think it's a pretty good archetype to teams to play in this current meta. For AoE and Hotbar, I won't talk too much just because there's really not much data. So maybe I'll just go to here, right, to see a bit more data. But they're not really doing too well, and it's not very popular. So that's why I'm not going to talk about those too much. Okay, so that is it for this meta report. There's definitely quite a bit more data in or more discussion in the blog post if you're interested in reading more of that. And yeah, good luck in the arena and the final climb to the top at the epic era. Okay, thanks again for joining, and I'll see you in the next video.